Hi, everybody. This is Larry Christansen bringing you the highlights of round four from the fourth Sinquefield Cup, and coming to you from St. Louis, Missouri. And today we had a very solid round of play, a few interesting moments, but mostly we saw a strong demonstration of very, very solid play and careful play and instructive play. These guys make very few mistakes. So let me say that. In fact, I don't think there was one the entire day round. No, it was virtually error free, which actually makes, of course, people want blood. But for if you're students of solid play, well, today was a classic round. Okay, yeah, my nose is growing. Okay, so anyway, but we had some good highlights here. I have a few, I think. This is from Ding versus Anand. We had an English opening, actually turned into I guess, a semi-terrish English. And this is the position here after Black's 21st move, Queen E6. Now, Black has an isolated D pawn, but he has a very active formation, that D5 pawn very well protected. Black has Luft, really not much to complain about. He's so here Deng tries to simplify the position with Knight D4. That's not unexpected, and I think Black might also consider Bishop takes D4, Bishop takes D4 takes, King takes, and work from here. I think this looks maybe Queen F5, for instance, looks fairly equal, or Queen E4 check. But he went along with Knight takes, even more solid. And here White played Bishop takes, otherwise he's got a bad bishop facing good bishop. And now he harasses the rook. So to stay out of trouble, here White plays Bishop C3. So he's got a weak isolated C pawn. Black has that vulnerable isolated D pawn. And this makes for a fairly level position. Okay, White piles up, Black takes. Honestly, White has, by virtue of this pawn on H4, White has a slight advantage. Okay, so now he's trying to nibble on these pawns, hitting A7 and B7. Black was found Rook, Queen B6. And now here Deng might have considered Rook A3, threatening Rook B3. And then Black he has to play Rook C7 to protect his queenside pawns, and then White can play the centralizing Queen E4, or even H5. Now, Queen E4, a strong advocate of centralization. And the plan here is, let's say Black plays H5 to stave off H5 from White. Then he goes a little further even and plays Queen E5, G6, E4, and that by virtue of that strong centralized queen, White has a small advantage, chances to convert that. Also, White, after Rook C7, he could go ahead and play H5, imposing somewhat of a cramp on Black's queenside and try to work from there. But instead, Deng played Rook E5, and the game on a very, of course, solid defender. Now he wants to trade queens. Queen F5. I think White could also consider Rook D5, but then Queen C6, E4, something like this. But Black is holding very comfortably. So here he puts the king to work to prevent Rook E7. And now, okay, Queen F5. And he trades off. And Deng was in a obliging mood. He could have considered Rook C5, keeping more material on the board. But after something like Queen E6 takes, Rook takes, Rook c7, rook e7. Now it's going to almost certainly be a draw anyway. And so the game petered out with a perpetual. Now let's go on to the game. A little somewhat more exciting was the battle between Stowe and Geary. Very well played game, especially by Geary. And this is for players who have had trouble with the Catalan opening. A lot of people do, including yours truly, historically. The formation adopted by Geary is one worth remembering. Okay, here's the dreaded Catalan. And so this idea, bishop b4 check back to d2, is designed to misplace the bishop, the dark squared bishop. White would prefer to fianchetto that bishop or maybe post up on f4. Okay, so black creates a very solid center. Now he's ready to get his deploy the bishop. And black expands wisely on the queen side, grabs some space. And I like black's attitude here. Oh, I'm going to take, okay, you want to give me space? I'll take it. So you get full court press here. Now one point here is, let's say white plays c takes d5, c takes d5, queen c6. What does black do here? Looks like black's completely busted, but he plays bishop b7, queen takes b7, knight d6, queen c6, rook c8, b5. That poor queen now is getting the treatment, and black has the edge. By virtue of these onrushing pawns. Also, let's say white grab back here. This is obviously prepared, by the way, I'm sure, by Geary. After bishop b7, what happens on queen takes e6 check? Well, then, after king h8, now the white queen, is in mortal danger. Rook f6 threatens. If she tries to get out of the predicament, knight e5, threatening knight f7 check. Black plays knight takes, pawn takes, knight g5 suddenly materializes. And the queen is lost, or material is lost. White can't play rook takes d5, knight takes e6, rook takes d8, but white will be to end up down a whole rook. So meanwhile, rook f6 is threatened. There's really no way out except for the feeble attempt, knight e5, knight takes e5. You can try bishop takes e4. But then black strikes with knight g4. It covers the retreat square. And if bishop takes f5, boom, bishop c8 does the trick. Wins significant material. Okay, so instead, notice he thought here for quite a while, so did. And to his credit, he rejected the very tempting c takes d5 and plays e3. Okay, now very well prepared Geary gets a very comfortable game. So we can find nothing better. If I guess he could have played knight bd2 or something like that. But black has just a very comfortable game after rook c8. I'm sure he wasn't too thrilled with playing bishop a3. And black has good play across the board now. And the game, another nice move, b4, opening up the bishop. And I think at this stage, white's thinking defense. I know a very ambitious move here by Geary, h5, to soften him up a little bit with h5, h4. Let's say white plays h4, maybe black can even create a kingside front with g5. Why not? So very carefully now trades everything off. And soon we had only knights on the board. full liquidation, and also a rather symmetrical pawn formation. There's another nice simplifying move, taking the grip off here, and now black tries to plays for the win with knight ef6, b4, another nice move. One would think that a4, the pawn would be dangerous. In knight endgames, rook pawns are very, very dangerous. But here it's blockaded and not particularly dangerous. And not much here going on. Double attacking. Getting rid of that dreaded a pawn, and now white takes out the c pawn, gives up the g pawn in return for it, and after f4 here, well, position so simplified a draw is assured. Okay, that brings us now to our game of the day. Pretty interesting battle. This is Nakamura white, Topalov very well prepared, Topalov black. Let's get right into it. Okay, it starts out Queen's Gambit declined. Bishop f4 variation. We've seen some Bishop g5 in this tournament, and we've seen some rather dull draws from that. So Bishop f4 is considered a bit more aggressive as compared to Bishop g5. And notice the move order adopted by Topalov in this QGD precludes an exchange variation, which is a line a lot of QGD players prefer to avoid. Okay, now e3 is the main alternative. Queen c2, sharper idea. Often white can either castle long or even play rook d1. Okay, black tries to free himself with c5, all book. He'll get the pawn back. But white would appear to have pressure against what looks to be an isolated d-pawn. Okay, now he plays cd. Now black has a plan to play queen a5 and perhaps simplify with knight e4 here. So he better take soon while he can. e3, queen a5 is quite okay for black, with the idea, by the way, of d takes c4. So Naka plays c takes d5, all book. Now e takes d5 is the main line. In fact, now Topalov uncorks a novelty with his next move. E takes d5 has been played, but after e3, queen a5, bishop e2, knight, let's say knight ce4, bishop e5, it looks like white comes out with a minuscule advantage, but at this level, minuscule advantages, you can work with it. Topalov plays the at first sight, shocking knight takes d5. Okay, so Naka now thinks for scratch his head, no doubt. A knight takes d5 wouldn't be very effective because pawn takes, black will have good counterplay based on a later queen a5 check. Let's say bishop e3, bishop e6, bishop e2, here he comes out, queen a5 check. Pressure against a2 and so forth. So the only consistent move going for advantage is e4. And there's the sack. So black's giving up his queen, gets a rook in peace and very active play. White has to be very careful here. Now, for instance, let's say white tries to solve that knight problem on f4 with g3. Black drops in, takes, knight takes. Now, if king e2, b6 is very uncomfortable for white. Here comes the bishop to a6. And if knight e1, hoping for bishop a6 and mass liquidation leading to equality, that would be dead equal. Black should instead go for much more. He could go for knight e5, menacing bishop a6 check And white's in pretty tough shape here. He can try to slink away with king f1, but now the bishop starts operating on this long diagonal. Um, and f5 is in the works, rook ac8. Black has a really nice initiative here for the very minor material investment. So Naka plays some excellent defense here with knight e5 covering d3. And when he did this, so I'm sure he calculated what happens after f6. Well, then he's going to strike back, counterattack with g3, f takes e5, g takes f4, e takes f4, and now he can get his kingside forces deployed, play bishop e2. And it looks like certainly black is not worse here, but white's getting his pieces out. He'll finish development. And let's say after b6, castles, bishop b7, rook d1, he trades off a pair of rooks. He can even think about going for the initiative. Or maybe he plays b4 first, actually. Kicks that knight away, knight d7, and then rook d1. One of the points being, let's say black plays bishop takes b4, white plays queen a4 double, attacking bishop and knight, bishop takes c3, rook takes d7, and looks like white is getting the upper hand. So after rook d1, black has other moves like knight e5, but certainly white's doing okay here. So Topalov averted that by playing bishop f6. Not f6 is a bit weakening. Now he plays knight b5. Notice the fights. Now they're fights over the d3 square. That's the primary fight here. b6. Kick and counterattack. Takes, a6, and takes. Okay, now we have a big moment here. So the knight's attacked. What happens on knight takes c8? Well, if knight takes c8, black does not take. He instead plays the vicious rook a to b8. And let's say then white plays knight e7, check, king f8, knight c6. Looks like a family fork, doesn't it? But then black plays rook b1 check and delivers mate. Ouch. Knight takes c8, rook b8. White is in grave trouble because of this threat, these threats. So Naka prefers to blockade. Very accurate. And black now has a rook, a piece, and a pawn for the queen. Well-placed pieces, but essentially the danger is over here for white. But some more accurate play is needed. g3. Now black had some other tries here. He could have, for instance, one idea was for black to quickly advance the a pawn, bring it up to a4 or a3, where maybe b2 might become a invasion point, and also bishop d7 to a4 might become possible. So a5, a4, a3, that had some possibilities for black, but it's of course far from conclusive. So Topalov plays for just common sense development. Now he activates the bishop. Also perfectly reasonable moves. I mean, this is just an overall well-played game by both sides. Plays knight e5, a5 here, and black covers that with his knight. White activates, black activates. He doesn't, of course. Bishop takes e5. A takes b5 would be that would strengthen black's hand. It has a very strong pawn formation. Of course, the bishop on d4 is very strong, and also the knight on a5 could become a target. So king g2 now sets up a potential f4. So he takes. Now he doesn't, of course, rook b2, queen takes b2. No, don't do that. Instead, he plays rook b5. Now, what about knight takes bishop, cd? Well, that pawn on d4 is very strong, and he's ready to go d3 at a moment's notice. If white tries to swat it away with f4, black plays d3, queen f1, and then knight g4. Now he's menacing rook b2 check, knight e3 check. If rook takes d3, rook b2 check is quite okay for black. Rook takes, queen takes d3, rook takes a2, and a draw is the likely outcome. So you can have mutual assured destruction of the various pawns, and a draw is very likely. So instead, we played rook, common sense, rook d2, planning rook c2 to blockade the c pawn, or possibly queen d1 to attack the bishop on d4. Topala very careful. Right, anchors that bishop completely. Okay, now here is another interesting moment. Black could have played knight b8 here, hitting the queen and the knight on b3. Of course, queen d3, c4. But then white plays queen a5. Okay, knight c6. Now queen a6 will have a draw by repetition, but so he plays queen c7. Black plays rook takes b3, queen takes c6. And now black can very comfortably hold the position by playing rook b to b8. The rooks love to be connected. If white plays a5, rook dc8, getting the rook behind the c pawn. That's his main source of counterplay here. Queen d7, c4, and ultimately what's going to happen is the c pawn will be traded for the a pawn, and probably rooks will be traded, and we'll get a theoretically drawn endgame. It was a possibility. But what Topalov did was also comfortably played rook, just simply rook takes, puts rook behind pawn. Okay, so now he's ready to round up the a pawn. And now we finally get trade c for a. If he doesn't take the c pawn, then it's very, very strong on c3. Better get rid of it. And again, connecting rooks. So Naka makes one last attempt to get something going on the king side. And rook b4 sets up the possibility of e takes f4. Then white's king will be exposed. So he prefers to avoid that. Plays queen d1. He keeps harassing the queen. Rook here. Now, if f takes e5, black does not play rook takes. Black does not play bishop takes e5 when rook d5 gives white something to work with. But instead he plays rook takes e5, and then if queen d1, black can play bishop c5, and a draw is the likely outcome. Rook d5, rook b to e8, holding everything safe and secure. If queen a1, then he holds that point. Yes, rook takes d5 might also draw, but f6 is definitely going to lead to a draw. queen c3, bishop f8, and black is building a fortress. No chance for white to win that. So instead, he played, they just repeated moves and shook hands. And by the way, if white had played f5, that is also almost certainly going to be a draw. And so, after 4 rounds of play, here are the standings. Four-way tie for first. Aronian, So, Anand, and Topalov leading with +1, 2.5 out of 4. 50%, Fabiano Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura, and Liren Ding have 2 out of 4. And then Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, currently he's the highest rated in this event, currently world number 2 from France. He's -1, 1.5 out of 4. Anish Giri, 1.5 out of 4 out of Holland. And bring up the rear is Peter Svidler of Russia with 1 out of 4. So so we're midway in this excellent event. Please stay tuned for more coverage of this elite World Tour event here on Internet Chess Club. This is Larry Christansen. Thanks for joining me.